Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess. Posting this one this week a day late for good reason. I had an anatomy test just now. It was on myology for anyone who cares, which is basically all the muscles of the body. A lot of info, a lot of nerves, a lot of super tiny muscles in your body. But made it through, did decent on the test, and now I'm excited because it is 4th of July tomorrow. And that makes me excited because it's also a 4-day weekend. I have nothing going on basically until a test I have again on Monday. So, yeah, happy 4th to everyone out there listening synchronously. If you're listening in the future, just know it's about to be a great weekend. Gonna celebrate some freedom. And on the note of freedom, another reason I didn't record this podcast yesterday is in the process of preparing for it. I got a little sidetracked between studying for my test that was today and different other various tasks I was doing. I was watching episodes of Outer Range. For those of you who don't know, Outer Range is a show on Amazon Prime. It's a cool show. A little bit Yellowstone, a little bit thriller, a little bit, kind of sci-fi. So definitely check it out if you're into something. It's good actors and actresses on the show. But it's a very interesting thing that happens during a stampede of bison, buffalo, however you want to call it. There is a billboard on the side of the road during this whole scenario in the show, and this one episode you pass by the billboard a handful of times, and it really is like driving the point home. So the billboard says, "America tells you that the only things worth knowing are those which can be known." And at the bottom it says, "America is wrong." And I'll tell you why I agree with that statement. So this is a little bit what today's episode is all about. As I've gone on in life, in my 33 years, early on you're kind of attracted to, more superficial things, things that matter for immediate survival. Food, kind of the appearances of things, different things like that. And it's not often that you get deep on a subject. And it's a bit of a gift and a curse. I've always been drawn to academia and, deeper ideas. I've been a reader since I was a kid. I could read at a high level very early on, so I got into some topics and books that maybe wouldn't have been introduced to me until much later, pretty early on. And that statement, "America tells you the only things worth knowing are those that which can be known." There's a lot of things that I study that I know in my lifetime I'll never likely know the answer. It's a lot of dichotomies. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I've talked about some very deep concepts and some diametrically opposed ideas, and you can bake your noodle on those all day. It's one of my favorite things to do, just to get lost in a kind of an argument with myself and play devil's advocate for a topic that I wish I could prove was true, but just know that it's not possible. That's pretty much the basis of the scientific method, is proving something wrong or, kind of preserving the idea that something might be true. We genuinely don't know a lot of things. And that thought alone can lead to a lot of wisdom, just knowing that we can't know, but it's also a little bit scary. And I think in America, a high priority I see is security. But security is really kind of a superficial thing, and it doesn't really exist. To me, there's only one idea of security that I can presently find, and it's very tedious and fleeting in a way. So I'm going to bring this episode back to that. That's going to be the conclusion of today, is my definition of kind of security. But to review last time, shifting gears back to Marvel Avengers and the Infinity Wars saga, the Infinity Stones, and how that fits into my understanding of Kundalini Yoga and other religions, spirituality processes, however you want to call it. So today, I was thinking about focusing on the Power Stone. In the movies, the Power Stone's featured in Guardians of the Galaxy, which basically sums up to, we can oppose strong forces as long as we have friends. Basically, we can do it together. And in that movie, they do actually handle the Power Stone, which is quite volatile. It's hard for one person to just hold on to it without dying. But they eventually use it to vanquish the villain of the movie. And then they give it for safekeeping, which is not safe for long, because a short time later, Thanos, our big bad, go figure, big purple guy goes after the purple Power Stone first. Just decimates this whole civilization, whole planet, and takes the Power Stone, and that's the first one he has. Obtains it rather easily, and I think the idea behind that is, this guy's obviously put together in the Infinity War movie. The first thing we see him do is essentially beat the shit out of the Incredible Hulk, which has been established as a very strong character physically. So more physically put together than the Hulk. Even, beats him without necessarily using the Power Stone. So obviously very formidable. At that point, you're like, well, shit, this guy's going to go collect all these stones and become, ultra powerful, but he's already damn powerful without it. So what are we going to do? And I think this idea of Thanos kind of getting that one first makes sense, but it's also a very limited view of power. So I think the best way to continue is to just talk about the kind of the third eye chakra. So this chakra is actually decently popular nowadays, thanks to psychedelics. A lot of people say they can take various psychedelic compounds and open their third eye and have hallucinations and all that. And I had a couple of psychedelic experiences myself. I can say that it is interesting. It's very informative. It's something I believe people should do safely, because the insights sometimes that you get from them, and just really the mental shift you can get is pretty fantastic. Kind of an understanding without doing too much work, kind of a shortcut in a way, and I don't think it's a bad shortcut. I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. But essentially, the third eye, I think of just the phrase "I see." So being able to see, and seeing not necessarily with our eyes, with our kind of our intuition. It's also tied to the pineal gland, which we'll get into a little bit later. But like I said, pineal gland is that tiny gland in your brain that apparently is affected by a lot of psychedelic drugs, and also they say it can be activated through breath work and stress and all kinds of different things to produce DMT. And even at the end of your life, when you die, you produce a little bit of DMT, and you kind of have a peaceful transition on into the afterlife, so to speak. So really interesting concept to me. But again, I've tried the shortcuts. I've tried the long way and in terms of my seeking of information. And again, I think it's really worth knowing, as much as we can, even if some things we know can't be known, we should learn everything we can up to that point. Even if it won't be a definitive outcome, I think that's something that's worth doing. So one way I've been able to get decently far is through the concepts of Buddhism. So in Buddhism, their version of wisdom includes kind of two things. So right view and right intention. So I think this, like I said, with Thanos, is that other side of power that isn't necessarily seen. It's not physical strength in the sense of power as maybe he knows it, but his power is enough to help him get the Power Stone. But he'll find pretty soon, as you go through the story, that that's not the only power that there is. But anyways, back to Buddhism. So starting with right view, again, it's kind of seeing without seeing, learning just based on contemplation. And this can be a review of your past, or even in the present moment, kind of learning from someone else's past. But what I've found is that Buddhism does a great job with explaining kind of what's happening in life. So in Buddhism, they have 3 marks of existence. So everything is impermanent. That means everything, even if it's just like a rock, at some point that rock's going to get broken up, changed somehow. It'll turn into lava and turn into a different type of rock, or, whatever. There's a source of suffering, and then there's a concept of no self. So just, we kind of inhabit this body, but we do not necessarily keep it. There's different religions out there that say you can, you're reborn and your spirit is in different bodies, but basically this body is not myself, is the kind of easiest way to think of it. And beyond that, probably the most helpful thing coming from that continent spiritually for me is the concept of karma. I think when people hear karma, they think of, if I do something good, I'm going to get something good in return, and bad karma gets bad in return. And that was kind of my understanding for a long time. But what I realized is karma just means action. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's more so just cause and effect in a way. So karma is an action. So you're the cause of this karma leads to an effect of another karma, and it's just a ripple effect. The world is this big ripple, ripple effect of karma. And so like my actions today may not affect anyone. It might just be a ripple in my own pool. But, if I go out in the world and say buy something from a business, then that person can use that money in their business to grow something or spend it on the family or whatever. And again, like you can see those intercollected actions, really can have an effect on the world, a positive effect and a negative effect. So just being able to see right view is just understanding the way the world works and understanding reality in a way that's as close to actual reality is possible, the way that we, with our sense organs can understand it. The more warped your view becomes, the more jaded you become, the more, confused or whatever it may be. Your actions will likely not be as effective as they could be. They may have unintended negative consequences or intended, which then again with karma, again, it's not necessarily good or bad, but I have seen these streams of cause and effect in my own life, and my intentions and my actions have definitely come back to me, whether good or bad. Definitely some very powerful stuff. And again, this is a type of power that's hard to quantify. It's not easily seen. But I think, again, if you want this quote unquote security in life, I think this is the closest thing we can get to it, is again, that right view, and then right intention, kind of a do no harm thing, do no harm vibe to it. And that's something that's definitely near and dear to me, being in chiropractic school and knowing the Hippocratic oath that doctors have taken for millennia. The fact of life is that life can be harmful. Just by existing, we're most likely doing harm to somebody. So I don't see do no harm as, be perfect. I think there's a lot of perfectionism in our world. But it is, as often as you can, just have the right intention, or at least the right intention from your understanding. And then if you do lose, life again isn't perfect. You may cause someone harm. Being willing and open to understand how you harmed someone and then change your future actions and grow and learn. Being open-minded. I think these are very positive things. So again, right intention is kind of do no harm. That doesn't mean being harmless. Because again, it's not possible to be harmless. By existing, we are going to be opposed to something in life. Even a baby, newly born in the world, you're going to be requiring things. You're going to be taking things from your mother, breastfeeding. They're going to have to clean you, when you eventually eliminate. It's probably the nicest way to say that. So right away we're needing things and causing other people potential inconveniences, but for a good cause in the promotion and growth of our species. So again, it's not something to feel bad about, but you should, in your life, I think what I want most is to do more good than harm, to be on that side of the equation, because I know I've already done harm in my life, and I've done a lot of good too. And as I go, I think the wiser you become, the right view and right intention doesn't mean that there is like a right way. Just right meaning like what's right to you right now. What seems right to you. Are you approaching this with kind of the willingness, almost in a way, to be wrong and hoping that you're not, and being willing to change and grow, I think is kind of the vibe behind it. Right is, there's, again, with the scientific method, we can prove that things are definitely wrong. So if you're using something that we've proven to be incorrect, then that's kind of, not this version of right view and right intention that we're talking about. So again, Buddhism has been really powerful for me, just to really guide, again, my intentions and my kind of my process in life, my learning process. It's like being a forever student is really important. If you're ever going to become a master of anything, you really can't ever stop learning. And that goes hand in hand with, again, that definition of power that you see in the movie from Thanos. I think as he goes through the movie and he collects all the other stones, which we'll continue to talk about in future weeks, you start to see that he understands that this power isn't necessarily something to be exerted on others. It's almost more of a responsibility and something that he exerts over himself. So as I've used the concept of Buddhism to learn, I've realized that power over self is really the ultimate power. And again, it's not something easily seen. It's not something easily done in today's world because, we kind of exert power with, showing money or having like a high status mate or, having a certain career or having, a big house and family and kids. And there's certain things that we say are quote unquote successful, but it doesn't mean that you have power over yourself. Oftentimes, some of the people highest up have the largest coping mechanisms and different things they do that they are completely out of control with. So just the way our society is set up, you can get to the top without having full control of yourself. And what I think is really interesting is you could have a homeless person on the street that's in complete control of themselves and technically in this way be more powerful than someone who, might have everything, quote unquote. So it's really interesting to me. But, and that's not to say that you should just become homeless and say, well, I'm powerful. That's not necessarily how it works. And I think my intention is to kind of gain some of these kind of physically powerful characteristics so that I can exert wisdom a little bit more effectively. Because if you don't have any resources, and you can't share these things effectively. So at least I have enough money to, get this podcast equipment and put these words in a podcast. At the very least, that's like probably the least I can do. And I'd like to do more for sure. And I think as a chiropractor too, sharing knowledge and things like that are going to be a bigger part of my practice even than, physical, spinal manipulation or anything like that. So, but again, power over self. And oftentimes I think, try to exert our power over others. So once you do build yourself up, you want to control other people. And I think, again, in my experience, the most rewarding relationships I have are with people who they've seen me build myself up and then are inspired to build themselves up, and then interact with me in a way where they have a choice. At any point, they can walk away. There's no expectations or anything like that, but they choose, time and time again to come back and, be a friend, or whatever it may be. And it can be really rare. It can be really frustrating, especially, because those people do have the ability to just walk away at any moment. Like a lot of people will, and a lot of times, it's hard. You can't make someone choose to want to try to know the things that can't be known. And to be friends with someone like me, I think you just have to be just as open-minded, just as willing to ditch maybe some of the things that you've been really holding on to for a long time. So it's not something that I take personally anymore. I used to definitely take it more personally, but as I've grown to understand, what's happening in the world, like this transition to power, having power over yourself and not necessarily trying to play, the quote unquote game in the world and climb the kind of social ladder, the corporate ladder, whatever it may be. It can be a little scary because there's so many people playing that game that enjoy that game. We've all agreed that that's the best game right now in society. But the only way that you can kind of build a new one is to step out on your own. and it is a little lonely. I've been at that point where I felt lonely before, but I think more and more people are becoming dissatisfied with the status quo. And I think steadily over the next few decades, we'll see transition to a little bit different thought process. And I feel like it's up to me to just put my ideas out there so that if someone were to want something different, they'd have a choice. They maybe would see something at least somewhat attractive, definitely different outside the box. But it is, I think I found a way of life that, could be an alternative. That's not to say that, what anyone else is doing is bad. It's just, if you really look at it with right view and right intention, I feel that I'm able to kind of poke holes in a lot of my previous motivations. And if you really look at yourself through the lens of Buddhism or any other type of spirituality, you'll find a lot of what we do is hollow. And that really everything we need is just right here within ourselves, genuinely, and finding this power over myself, wanting to inspire others, led me to completely change my career, kind of humble myself, come back to being a student and to try to be a chiropractor. And it really is the intersection of all of my interests and will give me a platform to help others who are hurting in some way. So one simple thing I wanted to talk about today in relation to that, helping people. If you've made it this far in the episode, this is your reward. If you listen to Andrew Huberman, who's actually coming to speak at my school in a few weeks, pretty pumped about that. One of the big things that he champions is basically just waking up and staring at the sun when you get up, not drinking your coffee right away. And it's definitely been on my radar for a few years, but I'm going to accelerate this to the forefront of your mind, as I have in my own, because bringing it back to the third eye, the pineal gland, one of the pineal gland's major functions is melatonin production. So melatonin is a hormone that regulates your sleep inertia, how tired you get. And if you're like me, you love that feeling of being tired after working all day. You just get I'm starting to feel a little bit of inertia right now myself. It's about 8 o'clock p.m. as I'm recording this. And as soon as I hop off of this, I am going to drink some night tea, take a couple night supplements, and probably hit the sheets. So very exciting and ready for a long, restful night of sleep. But bringing it back to power over self and, what we can do in our actual lives to bring it back to something that really is controllable in the now, and even someone that's homeless can do, is getting control over our circadian rhythm. And so I bring up Andrew Huberman and melatonin because, he really is a champion of that circadian rhythm. So at night, if you're not feeling tired, it's most likely because your cortisol is elevated. And cortisol is the stress hormone. It's not necessarily competitive with melatonin, but I can say having low cortisol and high melatonin is going to put you in a better scenario to go to sleep. And upon waking in the morning, going out and staring at the sun, like Andrew Huberman describes, what that does is it spikes your cortisol. And our natural circadian rhythm, we do want that high spike of cortisol first thing in the morning. I can tell you, after being addicted to cortisol for well over a decade, really that's the only way I could feel good about anything. I can see how a lot of people fall into that trap. They're using caffeine and other substances to keep themselves jacked up in that stress hormone. And it feels good because it does reduce your inflammation in the short term. And it makes you capable and ready to kind of attack problems. But it also, your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight is going to be super triggered. And when you're triggered like that all day, it's really hard to ever rest or recover. So when people feel burnt out, I think that's hormonally what they're describing. And there's a couple of other cascading hormone effects that I've seen in myself and in literature as a result of that. But I think really for me, this is the one that's the simplest to fix. And I think it, again, will have this cascade of effects on the other systems that if you do this one thing, it might fix everything else. It might not. And it might not do it right away. But I think it was the month of May, I gave up coffee, changed out for tea, which has far less caffeine than coffee. Especially what I was doing. I was doing like espresso shots, Americanos, iced Americanos, my go-to for sure. But basically having a tea and looking at the sunrise and not rushing to start my day, getting up well before I have to go do anything. If I have class at 10 a.m., I'm going to get up 7:30 or so, make some tea. By 8, I'm standing on my porch, drinking tea, letting the sun just hit my eyeballs. So what this does is it spikes your cortisol. And again, you're going to have more energy than a cup of coffee right away. And the more you do this consistently at a approximate consistent time every morning, your body's going to get on this schedule and the cortisol is going to handle itself. It's going to be present and available when you need it. This also requires in the evening kind of a nighttime routine. So one thing that I have done for years is take 5-hydroxytryptophan. If you know anything about that, it's an amino acid. It's a precursor to a few things, but most importantly, melatonin. So also watching the sun go down, kind of being outside right when it gets dark, those shades of colors hitting your eyes really triggers that melatonin response. So what you're going to get is the opposite of what you got in the morning. So you're going to get fired up in the morning, and then you're going to get sleep inertia at night. And this kind of coupled with not eating close to bed, made a huge difference. And now I can tell you, after close to 90 days doing this, and I've added coffee back in, but it hasn't, affected my body the way it was because I gave it a break. I can tell you that, I snap to attention in the morning. I'm wide awake first thing. I've never been a morning person, but I am now, apparently. And if I choose to sleep in, I can also sleep in. And then when I do eventually wake up, I feel great. So, again, super simple, something that I can't recommend enough. And then having a sleep supplement routine like tryptophan, glycine are two things that I take regularly, and going and Like right now, the sun's kind of setting outside, and in a minute, I'm going to be looking directly at that. And looking at that's going to make me sleepy, and, I'm going to pop open a book probably. Last night I did watch Outer Range after the sun went down. That was bad move on my part in terms of trying to tell my brain that it's sleepy. But most nights read instead of TV. Once the sun goes down, no TV. And I promise you're going to feel like a new person. It's honestly fantastic. So I'm going to hop off my soapbox there and bring this episode to a close with a quote that I think maybe a little controversial for some people. Some people are going to love it because it's kind of part of the 12-step recovery program. And some people won't love it because of that. And I think that 12-step program is a system that might work for some people, but again, it's not something that's for everyone. I don't think there's any system for everyone except for maybe Buddhism, only because it doesn't require you to be Buddhist. It just requires you to look at the world with new eyes. Again, like looking at different religions with new eyes, being open, I think is a huge thing. No matter what your beliefs are, I think it's fair. If there's something else out there that could help you, you would want that. And if you don't, because of your beliefs, those limiting beliefs are harmful to you. And, kind of knowably harming yourself. Like at that point, nobody can help you. So, again, Serenity Prayer can be a little bit controversial, I think, but I really like it. And I think it's a really great summary of Right View, which today, again, third eye vibes. The quote is, Serenity Prayer is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think that's where, if you want to talk about power, as humans, we do have limited power. There's only so much energy we have to do the things we want to do. And once you understand that there's something you can't change, there's no sense in putting any more energy to that pursuit. If you know for a fact that your efforts are just falling flat and it's not worth it, I think that's something that you can confirm is just like, hey, this is the wrong thing. It's easy to know the wrong thing. But if you think you're doing the right thing, it does take some courage to keep trying on something that maybe you'll learn in time that you can't change. But for now, you think you can, you can keep pushing. And again, that wisdom to know the difference, I think, can come from right view and right intention. And without getting into a whole other topic, another great quote is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think, my thoughts on heaven and hell if you've listened to the past few episodes, and just sin and virtue and all that. But again, like humans, we're kind of incomplete creatures. We do have a dark side to us. Even the best of intentions can turn out really, really bad. And so we're never going to be harmless. But, again, like intention is really, really huge. And being able to change your view, knowing that we're not right. There's no such thing as security. Almost admitting that you can't find security almost gives you a little security, because you're going to be open to making a better choice in the future, which is going to give you a little bit better chance. If you can just eliminate risk whenever you can, I think that's the closest you'll get to security. So On that note, thank you for listening to my rambles. Until next week.